And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey, it's an Artipia game, and that's always exciting because they did one of my favorite games. I think it's on the shelf right behind me, Among the Stars. What a great game. They also did Archon, which was a really good worker placement game. Here they have a game with special ability cards, Shadows over the Empire. That sounds incredibly exciting. Has different kinds of guilds and influence and meanness to other players. Let's check it out. Here's a setup for the game. This is not guaranteed or set in stone. It's a mix. You can set it up the way you want. The only thing that's required is that in the middle you put one of the notable personalities in the game. Like, for example, here's one, Duke Dieter. He has all 4 special abilities. He's lawful, religious, noble, and rich. If he was one of those, he would be non-lawful, etc., etc. Each person then will take one of the leaders. So for example, you can see that the judge here, he has a gold ring around trade. So his trade, that's his defining characteristic. He also has a wild characteristic of rich. And then he has some special abilities. And so if you were playing him, maybe I'd play the cardinal, who is obviously going to be around religion. Those 4 people are placed in the corners of the board. So for example, down here you can see that the Margaith, the prioress, she is religion. That's her defining trait, or it's actually called the compulsory trait. And then she has a wild trait here of the royalty. And the 3 cards that are next to her are set up. Now these people are, I guess, your ordinary people. They don't have every trait. So for example, this gentleman here, the proselyte, only has religion as one of his traits. While this lady here, the forest, has 3 different traits, and this person also has 3 traits. Most people have 3 traits, but there are people with different ones. They also have different special abilities. Now on a player's turn, they're going to take one action, and everyone's going to take actions until everybody passes. Players are going to have 18 tokens of their type that they're going to be trying to get out on the board in different ways. One of the ways they'll do this is a regular action, which is called an influence action. So let's say down here that the patrician here, or Nato, wants to influence Fergus, who's next to him. So he looks, how many characteristics do they have in common? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They don't have religion in common, so he gets to put 3 of his tokens, and his tokens, he's rich, so he gets to put 3 of his tokens on the character. He also gets to put this influence token on himself. Now, the rules of this game basically say that he cannot influence someone who does not have his trait, his compulsory trait, which is the merchant one. So if, for example, he was next to Yves here, he would not be able to influence Yves because that's just not possible. In fact, his faction is not able to do it. So let's say, for example, later on, and this card is flipped over, once he does that, this poet wants to do the exorcist. If the exorcist did not have trading, we couldn't do it, even though he matches him. So here they have 3 traits in common. They have 1, 2. They only have 2 traits in common. So if I was going to influence him, I would only put 2 on. Again, I put the marker on the poet when I use him to show that he can no longer do that. So you'll keep doing that. Obviously, you'll run out of people that you can do that to as time goes by. And it's important to note that when you influence somebody, you put a token on them too. So they can't, what I showed you here was actually would be in 2 different turns. I could influence him, and then on the same turn he influenced him. That's not possible. Now instead of doing that, you can use the special abilities on the cards. So for example here, the poet can subdue a diverging character card. Add 1 more token on it. Diverging means he can subdue. So instead of influence someone, he's going to beat the snot out of them. I don't know why a poet is doing this. But he could do that to someone who doesn't have the trading symbol. So let's see, this guy, no, there's no one near him, so that's kind of a useless ability. But you'll notice that on some of these abilities it shows a little cog, and that means when you use that ability, you need to rotate the character to show that they can't use it again. Which means that really this grid would have had to be much more spread out so that we can rotate all the different characters. Now what you're trying to do is you're trying to influence as many people as possible, and you're trying to get to the person in the middle, because if your leader's not rotated, rotate all your opponent's leaders. That's a pretty powerful ability, and you can reset your leader and use him again, use his special ability again. Now the way that you're trying to win this game is you're trying to get all 18 of your tokens on the board and be the only person to control the leader, or have all 18 tokens on the board and you're not in conflict with someone else. Now the way conflict works is, if at the end of your turn there is more than one person, no one controls that. There's no tokens. If there's more than one person's tokens on a person, no one controls that personage. So at the end of a turn, after everyone has passed, everyone loses a token from that. And so the tokens will come back to you anytime you're in conflict. So if someone else is controlling someone, you can throw one token on there, hopefully, to make that come back. Now you'll notice that I have all the characters facing towards me for purposes of this demonstration, but in reality, they'll be facing towards the person because you're going to need to be reading the cards all the time. And it doesn't take too long before all the cards are flipped over, and you have to kind of use the special abilities to your advantage, because it's basically an area control game and trying to race to get your markers out as quickly as possible. The rules are actually quite simple. It's the intermixing of all different characters. They have the characters, if you take a look here at this character, in the bottom corner you can see there's an A3. You're supposed to use the A's in your first game, then B's are a little bit more complicated, and C's. And you can mix them up, although the rules want you to mix them up a little bit evenly, but it kind of works out as time goes by. Anyway, first person to accomplish the goal is the winner of the game. Shadows over the Empire is a really cool concept. It is a game that I think is neat with the special abilities, and I'll tell you this right now, when you play it, I would almost recommend skipping their warning in the rulebook, like use just the A cards, mix it up, because the B and C cards, when I first played with the A cards, it was really boring. I had the other cards in, it added some excitement and interest to the game. So that's really, this annoys me, I think. With Shadows over the Empire, it is a cool game, but it is too difficult to play. And this is what I mean by it. When I was going over the game, you notice that I mentioned that turning the cards, rotating them, was such an annoyance to do. And it really is. So you have to spread all the cards apart. Not only that, reading the text on all the cards, many of them are upside down to you. You are constantly having to check that out. You are constantly looking around the board, and you have so many decisions on your turn. Like, I can use this guy to influence this, or use this to do that, and you have to check all your things because you can't mess up. You got to make sure you're the right influence. So it's a difficult game to play. There's so much going on in it that just in the long run, it just doesn't work very well. And I find that unfortunate because the gameplay itself is pretty interesting. To use influence, to control other people, to use the special abilities and trying to kind of sneak your way in there and having combat. So that's problematic. Now there is one game flaw per se, and that's that the game can devolve into a seesaw. Put some influence there, that's going to take one of yours away, you put an influence there, I do it to him, he does it to her, she does it to him, and we go back and forth, and it can kind of, the end game can be a little draggy and boring. The beginning's a little boring, the end's a little boring, the middle's really exciting. But it's just almost made unplayable by having to flip cards, look at them, move this. Pieces, well, where's the pieces? It would probably be a much better iOS game. So I'm not recommending this one right now unless you don't mind all that manipulation, moving cards and all that. And I know that already I'm going to get maybe a comment on this review, and people say, Vasel, come on, you're not attacking the game, you're attacking the methodology. But I need to be able to play the game in an easy way. I need to be able to not have to pause the game to turn cards and look at them and wait a minute, I turned that card to look at it, but it was already rotated sideways and oh, that's right, that guy has that. It's such a cool idea. I just think it probably could have been developed downwards, made more streamlined or something better. Anyhow, it's still a cool idea, but just almost too hard to play.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door! Or something like that.